5 men accused of plotting to kidnap and kill Governor Whitmer appear in federal court today in Grand Rapids. The suspect's attorneys argue that a jury should have access to out-of-court statements made by FBI agents and by confidential informants, statements that they say could be beneficial to their clients.
News Channel 3's Andrew Feather joins us now in Grand Rapids to tell us why prosecutors say that evidence should not make it to trial.
A federal judge listened to hours of arguments today over whether certain statements should or shouldn't be used at trial, but held off on making a decision until he could further contemplate those arguments. This comes as the FBI's case comes under fire due to what defense attorneys call questionable motives by FBI agents and the use of a confidential informant prosecutors now say was a double agent. As the March trial quickly approaches for 5 men charged with conspiring to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer, prosecutors and defense attorneys are at odds over what records the FBI collected should be shown to the jury. Attorneys for defendants Adam Fox, Brandon Caserta, Barry Croft, Kaleb Franks, and Daniel Harris have said they plan to argue they were entrapped by FBI agents and confidential informants they say planned and developed the plot.
Everyone got an opportunity to be heard. I think the court has done a nice job of allowing us to frame the issues and inviting appropriate input. So I'm looking forward to getting some answers, hopefully from the judge one of these days.
At issue today, whether jurors will be shown more than 250 text messages and recordings with statements from FBI agents, confidential informants, and the defendants themselves. Defense attorneys argued the statements are potentially exculpatory and bolster their argument any conspiracy was driven by the government. Prosecutors argue the evidence is hearsay or inadmissible and is being used as a way to prevent the defendants from having to testify and face cross-examination. U.S. District Judge Robert Yonker did not yet rule on whether the statements will be admitted, but signaled he will likely turn down a defense motion to dismiss the case.
We'll control what we control, and we'll keep moving forward.
Prosecutors also argue the court shouldn't view one of the FBI's confidential sources during the investigation as an agent of the government because it was discovered he was a double agent and was attempting to destroy evidence. Stephen Robeson, prosecutors say, offered to use a drone to commit domestic terrorist attacks. The U.S. attorney and assistant U.S. attorney prosecuting the case both declined comment after the hearing. There is no timeline on when the judge will rule whether or not the evidence will be admitted. A 6th man, Ty Garbin, was sentenced to 6 years in prison last year after pleading guilty. The prosecution plans on using him as their star witness when the case goes to trial in March.
Tonight, a Kalamazoo mom tells us her 9-year-old daughter has died of COVID-19.
She's the second child in the Kalamazoo community to die from COVID-19 in the last week.
And News Channel 3's Jay Shatar is joining us live in Kalamazoo as we learn more, Jay, about how local schools are trying to combat rising COVID cases in our schools.
Yes, Aisha went here to Woods Edge Learning School, to K. Reese School, but her sisters do attend Kalamazoo public schools now. Aisha's mother says that her daughters have followed COVID rules, but there is still some concern about sending them back to school. Shatavia Buchanan recalls her daughter's final moments. Her daughter, Aisha, was hospitalized and fighting for her life in a battle against COVID-19.
I was actually real worried about her because of how the condition she was in. Like, her heart was beating really too fast. So I called ambulance. They took her to the hospital. She went to the hospital. She had to get her breathing tube down her throat right away.
Aisha would lose her battle at just 9 years old, dying days before her 10th birthday.
She was already in too much pain. She was uncomfortable. She was really just struggling.
Shatavia says her 3 daughters attend Kalamazoo public schools. All 3 are students at Arcadia Elementary School. She tells me her 9-year-old daughter tested positive for COVID-19 around the same time she did.
A little feeling in me that's still worried, like to send them back to school.
Kalamazoo Public Schools reported a record number of 64 positive cases in kids on Monday. Over 200 students in the district have tested positive for COVID since returning from winter break. Nearly 40% of all student cases reported this school year have occurred in the last 8 days. For comparison, Portage Public Schools has reported 364 positive cases among students since January 10th. That's about 37% of all student cases for the school year.
Underlying goal is to keep children and also staff in school. We know the benefits of social development and learning are just paramount.
Dr. William Nettleton is the medical director for Kalamazoo County Health Department. He says right now there is no need for public health to step in because the tools are in place to minimize risk.
The best way to keep kids in school, to keep staff in school, and for business and healthcare to carry on is for the general public to get vaccinated and also, when eligible, to get the booster shot.
Buchanan tells me she mourns and she hopes that no other parent will have to suffer the loss of a child.
She was really just struggling for her life, like she was fighting too hard.
Now, KPS tells me it is following the guidance of MDHHS and the local health department and, of course, the state's Department of Education. Now, KPS does tell me no new measures in place in wake of this death. And, of course, we know last week the death of a 17-year-old student as well.
Good evening. Kalamazoo's $245 million budget just got the green light. The City Commission approved that plan a few hours ago. Among the budget's biggest priorities, capital improvements. News Channel 3's Chris Yu explains live how those will impact city residents. Chris.
Yeah, Andy, the 2022 budget, which was approved by the Kalamazoo City Commission tonight, features $81 million in capital improvements. And among the biggest projects involve the water and wastewater systems. The Public Services Director says improving them will lead to better reliability and safety, too. 838 miles of water mains. Nearly 42,000 connections. Kalamazoo has Michigan's largest groundwater-based water system, even though the city's population ranks 20th in the state. But the city also has aging water mains. So the Public Services Department is working to replace them.
Water reliability isn't just about drinking water. Certainly it is. That's one of the main components of that. But a community water supply is also about fire protection. Fire hydrants are there for a reason.
Capital improvements like replacing water mains are some of the biggest priorities for the city's $245 million budget, which was unanimously approved tonight.
This motion passes.
The 2022 budget features more than $81 million in capital improvements. Of that total, $39 million will be spent on the water system, and nearly $18 million will go toward the wastewater system.
Environmental focused and community health focused.
With that in mind, the city will continue to replace lead service lines.
There's no safe level of lead, regardless of where we're at in terms of lead action level. We always want to be better.
Other capital improvements include road projects.
We're going to be touching 33 local streets this year with pavement preservation techniques.
The Public Services Department is recommending an increase in utility rates to help pay for some of those projects. Now, for the average city customer, it would mean a hike of a little more than $100 a year combined in both wastewater and water services. Now, this rate increase has not been approved. A first reading and vote is planned for next month.